Upon intercept and coming within visual range, American forces began to issue several clear and unambiguous warnings and inform the vessel and their crew that they were in a violation of the U.S. blockade and directed the ship to turn around. Over a 6-hour period, the vessel and her crew repeatedly ignored U.S. warnings. And then the U.S. Navy destroyer executed a series of pre-planned, carefully calibrated escalation options, including firing 5 warning shots. The vessel and her crew continued to ignore warnings. And after exhausting all other measures, CENTCOM authorized disabling fire against the Tusca. U.S. sailors warned the crew of the Tusca to abandon the engine room, and at approximately 9 a.m. Eastern Time, the destroyer disabled the Tusca's engine by firing 9 inert rounds from the destroyer's Mark 45 5-inch guns precisely into the engine room and engine space on board the Tusca. Not surprisingly, the vessel then reported issues with their engine, went dead in the water, and began to comply with U.S. directions and orders. At 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, CENTCOM ordered United States Marines to seize the ship. Via helicopters, U.S. Marines maneuvered quickly to the disabled ship, boarded her from fast ropes via helicopter infiltration methods, and took custody of the ship. The ship and her crew remain safe in U.S. custody today. Let me now turn to global operations in the Pacific, and I want to highlight that this is a major interagency effort between the United States military, the White House, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice. On Monday, April 20th, U.S. Indo-PACOM forces, in support of a Department of Justice request, interdicted the motor tanker Tiffany, which was transporting sanctioned Iranian oil. The Tiffany is a very large crude tanker, VLCC for short, and is also about the size of a U.S. aircraft carrier and capable of transporting approximately 2 million barrels of oil. At approximately 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. military forces and law enforcement forces also went to the ship via rotary wing platforms, fast-roped onto her deck, and secured her. After the ship was secured, a U.S. Navy control team embarked aboard the Tiffany, and assumed control of the ship at 4 a.m. Eastern Time on April 21st. A Navy control team is comprised of sailors led by a boarding officer that assumes control of a seized ship in order to secure the crew, the cargo, and the vessel, and disposition of that first vessel is still pending. The next interdiction occurred on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, 22 April, when Indo-PACOM conducted yet another interdiction, again at the request of the U.S. Department of Justice. This time, the stateless motor tanker Majestic X, also known as the Ponix, also in the Indian Ocean. This is again a VLCC, or very large crude tanker. At approximately 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, U.S. forces began the interdiction, again using rotary wing assets to get to the ship, got on board, and secured the bridge. Both ships, the Tiffany, the Majestic X, and their crews remain in U.S. custody. And we will continue to conduct similar maritime interdiction actions and activities in the Pacific and Indian Oceans against Iranian ships and vessels of the Dark Fleet. The actions by our service members and our law enforcement partners demonstrate the incredible discipline and dedication and professionalism of our joint force and highlight the global reach of American combat power. The joint force remains on ensuring the Iranian regime cannot harm our interests or those of our allies and partners. And I'll highlight that Iran has repeatedly sought to offensively and proactively expand the conflict by aggression against its neighbors and its attacks on global shipping through the Strait. To date, Iran has attacked 5 merchant vessels, seized 2 of them that were attempting to transit the strait. And these include ships that Iran itself had cleared to proceed. Now, as I always do, I want to honor members of the Joint Force. Today, I want to highlight and proudly describe the essential role of our intelligence enterprise and the role that they play in conducting our military operations. The totality of their work is the culmination of days, months, and in many cases, years of work by our uniformed and civilian intelligence professionals. We have been able to do the work that we are ordered to do because America's intelligence force, including our core collectors and analysts, have spent decades searching for every loose thread. From the determination of a particular intelligence requirement to that piece of intelligence being collected in the field by a military or interagency case officer to the rigorous analysis that goes into reporting on that finding, those team members spend their careers answering the incredibly important questions that we must attempt to answer before, during, and after operations. They live in the enemy's mind. Normally located behind the green door or behind the vault door in dark, windowless rooms across the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, are world-class intel members from DIA, our service intelligence components, NSA, NGA, CIA, NRO, and in the case of the operations that I've just described, the Office of Naval Intelligence, all work tirelessly to sift through the mountains of collected information using tools, tactics, techniques, and procedures that I'm not going to discuss today. The sun never sets on these world-class professionals, and their goal is every minute of every day to be on the account. And they know the enemy. They know their combat capability, their weapons, their industrial and economic systems, and they know their leaders' pattern of life, where they go, what they think, and what they do. Thanks to their work, we know Iran, and it is an incredible work that they do. Again, none of our operations that we've conducted during my time in this job could have been done without the service of these intelligence professionals. And the distance from those core collectors and those analysts to those Patriot crews who are defending U.S. forces forward or the fighter pilots is incredibly small. Every single day, as their mottos say, they are committed to excellence in the defense of the nation and to securing the future, and they're doing the work of the nation. Before I close, as I do every time, I want to highlight and remember our fallen. Today, I want to highlight the 63 victims of the terrorist bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Beirut, which occurred 43 years ago, just a few days ago, on April 18th, 1983. At that time, this was the deadliest attack on a U.S. diplomatic mission, and this was the first attack conducted by Iranian-backed forces on Americans. The suicide bomber detonated a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device out in front of the embassy, killing 63 innocent people, including 32 Lebanese, 14 visitors, and 17 Americans. And among those lost, members of the Joint Force to include 3 Army soldiers and 1 United States Marine. We remember their names: Sergeant First Class Richard Twine, Staff Sergeant Ben Maxwell, Staff Sergeant Mark Salazar, and United States Marine Corporal Vincent McMaw. Today we remember them. We carry on their memory and the memory of all our fallen, and remain grateful for their sacrifice and that of their families who continue to show us what courage looks like. As we continue to press forward and maintain these operations, the Secretary, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and I are deeply humbled by the spirit, tenacity, and commitment and grit of the 2.8 million members of our Joint Force. The Secretary and I thank every member of the Joint Force engaged in this operation, every warrior who remains deployed or who is supporting from here at home. Thank you to, and thank you to your families. Sir, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll take a few questions. Thank you. In your estimation, have there been increased or decreased instances of Iranian vessels either approaching or trying to breach the blockade the longer it is in effect? And another question about the mine threat. Has the mine threat been neutralized enough to facilitate freer flow in the straits?
Well, to the second question, first of all, we are seeing vessels transiting. There are paths that are open. And part of what the president is threatening is ensuring if there's attempts to recklessly and irresponsibly lay more mines, we're going to deal with that. It's a violation of the ceasefire. So transit is occurring, much more limited than anybody would like to see, and with more risk than people would like to see. But that's because Iran is doing irresponsible things with small fast boats, crafts, like I said, with weapons on them. These are commercial ships, in some cases cruise ships that came through being threatened by these. So as far as breaching the blockade, it's been a pretty consistent. There were a number of ships at the beginning. Then you had the interdiction that the chairman described, where we took out the engine room and disabled that ship. I think that sent a very clear sign that this is not a fake blockade. This is a real, full blockade. We'll use up to and including lethal force if necessary, and that stopped, and other ships have taken note of that.
That is, of course, the press conference addressed by U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and General Kane, once again saying that Iran has this, quote, historic chance to make a deal with the United States of America, and that right now the ball is in Iran's court. Also, of course, giving out details of the vessel that was attacked by and seized by the American forces, and completely rejecting the two vessels that had been seized by the IRGC Navy, saying that they have just picked up two random vessels and seized them. They're not related to either America or Israel. That, of course, is the Pentagon briefing that is happening. More details, of course, coming out. Once again, an aggressive posture that has been put out by the United States of America, specifically Pete Hegseth, giving out details and once again threatening Iran to make a deal, or saying that the U.S. forces are locked and loaded and ready to go to war once again. All right, with that, it's time for a short break. News and updates will continue on WION.